The rain that night didn't fall gently. It slammed into the cracked pavement like it was angry too. People hurried past with umbrellas tilted low, eyes forward, pretending not to see the two elderly figures sitting on flattened cardboard near the closed Sorry Sorry store. One of them coughed, a dry, painful sound that came from deep in the chest. The woman beside him rubbed his back slowly, the way you do when you've done it 1,000 times before and don't need to think. Their names were Ernesto and Lilia. For more than 40 years, they had lived as husband and wife, as parents, as the quiet backbone of a family that once filled a small house with noise, laughter, and dreams spoken too loudly. That night, they had nowhere to go. No keys in their pockets. No phone calls left to make. Ernesto looked at the road and whispered, almost embarrassed, "Maybe tomorrow will be better." Lilia nodded, even though both of them knew tomorrow had already been promised to them many times before. This story didn't begin on that street. It didn't begin with rain or cardboard or silence. It began decades earlier, in a cramped but warm home where rice cooked every morning before sunrise and children slept shoulder to shoulder on thin mattresses. Ernesto worked as a mechanic, his hands always stained with oil, his back always sore. Lilia sold vegetables in the market, waking before dawn, bargaining hard, smiling even harder. They were never rich, but the house was full of voices, full of hope. Their children were their pride, 3 of them. Each one carried a dream that was fed with sacrifice. Ernesto skipped meals so school fees could be paid. Lilia wore the same sandals until the soles went thin because uniforms mattered more. When neighbors talked about migrating, about bigger money elsewhere, Ernesto would laugh and say, "My investment is here," pointing at his children. The children grew. School became college. College became careers. The house that once echoed with running feet grew quieter. One by one, the children left. At first, they called often, then sometimes, then only on birthdays, then not even that. Still, Ernesto and Lilia waited. They believed in the stories parents tell themselves when the phone doesn't ring. They're busy. Life is hard. They'll come back. When Ernesto's hands started shaking and engines became harder to fix, he stopped working. Lilia's knees gave out not long after. The market stall was passed to someone else. Their world shrank to their home, their memories, and the hope that family meant something unbreakable. The first conversation about moving out came gently, wrapped in concern. One of the children said the house was old, unsafe, repairs were expensive. Another suggested Ernesto and Lilia come stay, for a while, just until things were sorted out. Papers were signed that Ernesto didn't fully understand. He trusted the familiar voice across the table. Why wouldn't he? They packed lightly, just clothes, photos. The small wooden box where Lilia kept letters and old receipts and folded prayers. "At least we'll be together," Lilia said. The first house they stayed in was clean, modern, and cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. They were given a small room, told not to touch certain things, told to keep the TV volume low, told, gently at first, that they were a burden. Meals became separate. Conversations became instructions. Ernesto learned to make himself small. Lilia learned to apologize for existing. Then came the excuses. "Just for a few days. We're moving." It's complicated right now. Bags were packed again and again. Each time, the space they occupied grew smaller. One afternoon, they were dropped off to wait. The car drove away. The phone stopped ringing. The waiting became hours, then night. That was how Ernesto and Lilia ended up on the street, surrounded by strangers who walked past their pain like it was invisible. In Filipino culture, elders are supposed to be sacred. Parents are supposed to be honored. But culture is fragile when convenience takes over. For weeks, they survived on kindness from people who owed them nothing. A woman from the bakery gave them leftover bread. A tricycle driver let them sleep near his stand. Lilia kept her clothes neat, even when they slept outside. Ernesto still combed his thinning hair every morning. "What if they come looking?" Lilia asked one night. Ernesto didn't answer. He was staring at the sky, blinking back tears he felt ashamed of. What their children didn't know, what they never bothered to ask about, was the inheritance. Not money in the way people imagine it, not cash stuffed in a mattress, but land. Old land, passed down quietly through generations. Land. Ernesto never talked about because he believed love was enough. Years earlier, Ernesto's father had left him documents, titles. Not flashy, not discussed, just something for the future. Ernesto had planned to divide it fairly, to give his children a foundation, something solid to stand on. He never imagined he'd need it for himself. As Ernesto and Lilia struggled, the land changed, development came, roads, projects. What was once overlooked became valuable, very valuable. Offers were made. Ernesto refused, not because he didn't need the money, but because he believed reconciliation mattered more. He believed selling without his children's knowledge would be a betrayal. Then Lilia got sick. Hospitals are loud and quiet at the same time. Machines beep, shoes squeak on polished floors. Lilia lay thin and tired, her hand in Ernesto's. No children came, no calls, just paperwork and bills and silence. A social worker listened to their story and frowned, not in surprise but in recognition. She had heard it before, too many times. She helped them file documents, helped Ernesto understand his rights, helped him see that dignity didn't have to mean suffering. Lilia passed away on a Tuesday morning. The sun was bright. Ernesto held her hand until it went cold. He whispered apologies for things that were never his fault. At the funeral, only a few people came. Neighbors, volunteers, no children. Something changed in Ernesto after that. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. He sold the land. The amount shocked even him. Numbers he had never imagined were now printed neatly on paper. Enough to live comfortably, enough to be secure, enough to help others. He didn't call his children. Ernesto moved into a small, clean apartment near a church. He donated quietly. He funded scholarships. He paid hospital bills for strangers who reminded him of Lilia. He lived simply. Every peso had a purpose. Years passed. One day, one of the children found out. A lawyer mentioned a sale, a figure, a missed opportunity. Calls were made, messages sent, apologies rehearsed, stories rewritten. Ernesto listened. He always listened. Then he said calmly, "I already gave you your inheritance." There was silence on the line. "I gave you my youth, my strength, my love. You chose what to do with it." He hung up. When Ernesto passed away, there was a will. Clear. Final. His estate went to charities, to shelters, to programs that cared for the elderly who had been forgotten by their families. His children received letters, not money. The letters were simple. They spoke of love, of disappointment, of forgiveness that didn't erase consequences. Today, the street where Ernesto and Lilia once slept has been repaved. People walk faster there now. Fewer cracks, fewer places to sit. But their story lingers. It lives in the quiet guilt of children who thought success meant leaving everything behind. It lives in the hands of elders who still give even when they have nothing. It lives in the truth that inheritance is not just what you receive when someone dies, but how you treat them while they live. And somewhere, in a small apartment filled with light, there is a photograph of Ernesto and Lilia when they were young. Smiling, hopeful, believing that love, once given, would always find its way back. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the shock isn't what they missed. It's what they chose to throw away.